Welcome to the Master Your Millions podcast, the show all about your financial potential and leaving a legacy for future generations. Here are your hosts, Jason and Scott Henderson.
And I am your host, Scott Henderson, and my co-host is Dr. J. We are excited to have this special guest on. Jason, who do we have coming on?
Scott, this is a recent friend of mine. We met at, we were both speakers or presenters at a women's conference of sorts. And I was very impressed with some of the things that she had to say. So right away, I invited her to be a guest on our podcast. Her name is Tina Greenbaum. She is a Philadelphia native. And believe it or not, she is a TEDx speaker. She's a high performance coach and author. And one of the things that she specializes in is helping people resolve conflict. So I was kind of excited about that and how that fits in with building wealth and mastering your millions. Welcome to the show, Tina.
Thank you so much, the Henderson guys. Nice to see you.
Now, you could almost say Henderson Brothers, but we will go a different direction there. Tell us a little bit, how did you get into this whole thing about conflict resolution?
Well, it's kind of a circuitous path that takes me back to the very beginning. I come from a family where my mother couldn't stand conflict in the household. So we were three kids. I had a father who could go silent for days and a mother who just couldn't stand that. So when the family would get overly, what can I say? Fighting and all kinds of tension in the household, she would call a family meeting. That was her thing. It's time for a family meeting. And she would sit us down and we'd have to talk to one another. My father would sit there with his newspaper in front of his face and she'd go, Mitch, put the paper down, talk to your children. And so what I did learn was how to have difficult conversations. And I am very much my mother's daughter. And my mother was amazing with people. And imagine having a mother that was just never wrong about people's character. That was very scary. But I did honestly inherit a lot of her sort of emotional intelligence. We have a name for it now. And so my career has been, I am a licensed clinical social worker, a psychotherapist, but really a teacher at heart. So I'd have people come to me and they would talk about their mother, their father, the sister, all these kinds of things, but they weren't changing. And I like action, I like to be successful at what I'm doing. And so the problem solving part of it has really been the part that captures my attention, gets my entrepreneurial spirit going, and how are we going to do this and how are we going to do that? And so basically conflict is, it's the inner conflict. And then of course the outer conflict. Once I get to know myself really, really, really well, then I'm empowered actually to be able to deal with everything else that's going on outside of me. And so I created a program called Mastery Under Pressure. And that's the peak performance side of it. I have kids that were really great athletes. And I'd say to one of my kids, I don't need to teach you how to kick in soccer. You're a master soccer player, but when you're in front of the goal and, the whole game is depending on whether you're going to get this penalty kick or not. That's the mental side. And my father was a great athlete. So putting all these pieces together over time, I've always been fascinated by how do we get under the conscious mind? Because again, we could talk, but unless it actually reaches the heart in some way, shape, form, or another, reaches the body and the emotions, we don't change. It's just talk. So combining the logic and the emotions is what I did my TEDx talk on. It's called Befriend Your Inner Enemy. The part of us that, God, I wish I could, I just keep making the same mistake over and over and over again, that Groundhog Day thing. And that's been my investigation, is really how do we get under the conscious mind, because that rules everything, and create change in whatever system we're working in.
Sounds like you work a lot with maybe C-suite level people
Yes,
and other businesses, and it's interpersonal relationships and how to resolve those conflicts. And that's very fascinating. However, I want to talk a little bit more about what your views would be on your relationship to money. This is Master Your Millions podcast, and that relationship to money can really serve us or um, kill us. I don't know what the right word is. I mean, really work against us. What
absolutely.
tell me a little bit what your thoughts are, what the kind of the overall how what's most people's relationship to money and how do they change it?
So I could start with my relationship to money, coming from a father who was a depression baby and being married to somebody who was also kind of a very depression, scarcity oriented. And in my household, you could not walk in with something new without kind of either hiding the price tag, because my father, the first thing he would ask is, how much did it cost? How much did it cost? So I grew up with that incredible consciousness, which created a tremendous amount of stress, actually. And my father was very, very, very organized, and my ex-husband was a serial entrepreneur. So I went from this very predictable kind of, my father was actually quite obsessive around everything, to this crazy entrepreneur who had to learn to live with that level of uncertainty. So I went from, sort of this myth of security, because anything can happen to anybody at any time, to having to, we had the money today, we didn't have the money yesterday, we have the money tomorrow, we're rich, we're poor, we went through tax. I went through a lot. So given, again, that my interest is what's going on inside of here, my relationship with money was a central part of my personal growth, honestly. And so what I have learned is that money is neutral. Money has no emotion. It's just a trade. If I give you my phone and you give me something back, we have exchanged something, and money is an exchange. What we do it, though, is we bring our psychology and our history and our stories and our belief systems and our craziness to the concept of money. And so having, listened to you, and I have your book, Jason, you have kind of dissected the rationale and the logic behind money. That's not emotional. And what's emotional is the stories that we bring to it. And every person that you talk to has a story. And unpacking the belief systems under the story is what creates the freedom, basically. So I hear many, many, many stories. And one of the exercises that I did, and I've done a lot of work around it. I have a lot of books on, the energy of money and the psychology of money and this and that, because I wanted to be able to, honestly, I would read about, again, going through a lot of spiritual trainings and all kinds of trainings, you've got to come across, Napoleon Hill and Think and Grow Rich, and the stories of Henry Ford and stories of the Rockefellers. And there was always kind of like this story in the background about the secrets that they had, the secrets about money. And I wanted to know what those secrets were and are. And this whole idea of mindset, quantum physics, belief systems, your thoughts, all of that kind of wrapped into, how do I actually do this thing? If my bank account is very low and my thoughts are all around fear that the money is going to disappear, it will. It will. Unless I do something that has action to it, but also has thought behind it. And again, gets a little complicated, but going back to how do I get under the conscious mind and how do we clear old belief systems? A lot of those systems I use for myself. There's a thing called EMDR, which is eye movement. I have a lot of training in trauma. And how do we clear old beliefs and stories? And then you might have heard of tapping. And there's a lot of different techniques that we have now that work with the neuroscience to actually clear the trigger of an event. Does that make sense?
So are you saying you want to clear the
All belief
like
systems.
in the event I'm understanding, clear the negative
Mhm.
relationship to money, clear that out, and then replace it with a positive or healthy relationship.
Correct. And I call it in my program, I call it productive thinking. Is instead of positive thinking, I call it productive thinking. Do my thoughts produce something useful for me? And if they're not useful and they're not helpful, they're going to take me down a spiral that I don't want to go. And so when I think about money and I think about how I want to think about it, I want my thoughts to be filled with possibility and creation and excitement and all of those things that produce actually changes in they change your chemistry. And so when we make these little changes, and again, if we come back to this energy, the energy of money and attracting people and money to us, and it all has to do with how we present ourselves and the energy that we carry. If we walk around like this and life is terrible, and that's what we're going to attract. So basically, I think what I'm saying is that everything that I could possibly do to put myself in the best position that's possible to create the wealth and the health and all the other good things, I work on.
So what are some of the common things that you see when people first start out versus say when they're having a roadblock? Let's say it's $1 million that they're trying to get over, but they just are having that. Are there
Trying to get
similarities?
over
Are
in
they
trying to get over, Scott, in the sense that they've lost it, or they're trying to achieve it?
achieve it, but it's just slipping their grasp? Like I'm thinking of almost like a plateau in weightlifting where you hit that point and you're having a hard time getting higher.
Right. So we all have blind spots. And I think it's really important that we know our own blind spots. So one of my blind spots was that shiny red object. The next person is the next one that's going to help me get to exactly where I want to go. Believing in people that maybe didn't have the track records that I should have done better due diligence on. I spent a lot of money on coaching and working on my business, and some have worked out, some haven't worked out so well. So some of the things, again, from self-awareness and self-investigation, I'm able to start to recognize my own patterns, because behavior runs in patterns. And so if I can see that, oh, here I am again, thinking that this person is going to take me where I want to go. Okay, so I'm a little cautious now. I'm a little more cautious rather than jumping in. And then what did I learn? What can I learn from the last experiences that I've had that haven't worked out? And then what can I replace something new? And so what I know for me, and again, everybody has their own story, that's a blind spot. That's kind of like a little vulnerability that I have to be careful about. So I like to ask for help. When I'm ready to make a big decision, a big financial decision, let's say, I might call, my bookkeeper, or my tax person, or I might even call my brother and say, okay, what am I not seeing? What am I missing here? What I haven't, and so other minds help to fill in the blind spots that I have. So I think that's kind of where I would go with.
So how do you find those blind spots then?
How do I, so again, I work with my body. There's a certain patterns have a certain place in the body, and they have a certain thought in the mind. And so if I start to feel like, again, that feeling like I'm ready to make a big decision, like I just hired somebody, I hired a very expensive business coach who I have a lot of faith in. And I could start to feel that same feeling like, oh, I'm getting ready to make another mistake, or have I missed something? Or it's a feeling of vulnerability for me again. And I feel kind of anxious and I don't feel confident. So I have learned over time, given the numbers of people that I've hired and the mistakes that I've made, that I'm vulnerable here. So it's the same thing like with your health, you know, if I have a bad back, you know, I have to be really careful how I, you know, pick up things and walk and do that. And it's the same thing with making money decisions, financial decisions. Some I'm really good at, it's real clear, I can do it really quickly. Other ones, you know, I need some help with this one. I maybe need to ask 3 people. You know, I ask for references. Have you worked with this person? Is this person actually have they been successful about where I want to go? Just again, there's a whole bunch of due diligence questions and things that you can ask. So that's that's how I find them. You may have your own way of, this hasn't worked out for me before. This feels a little familiar. What do I need to do to protect myself?
We could possibly get caught up in our blind spots in our relationship for money and almost go in a cycle and it almost endless, right? I mean, sooner or later the rubber's got to meet the road and we got to get going.
Yep.
And so here comes this a different sort of question. It says, well, what does wealth mean to you? I mean, what does that look like to you?
To me, it looks like freedom. It's just that one word, that I can take care of myself. I can help my family. I can help my children. And for me, once I hit a certain point where I don't need any more money, I have enough money to do what I want to do. I want to give it away.
So is that a sum of money? Is that a certain amount of passive income?
It's
Is that a
related
certain possession?
absolutely to the passive income. Yeah, it's not working harder, longer hours and doing all of that.
Okay, and so what are your 3, 4 top key vehicles to create passive income?
So, you know, when I was listening to your talk and following you along, and yes, we've done that, and this didn't work, and that didn't work, and that didn't work. What has worked for us, and again, I didn't make this up. I was guided to it through a tax person that I respect a lot, and a group that we're getting coached. My husband and I are getting coached on that wealth building, achieving that number that we want to achieve for financial freedom, or whatever you want to call it, passive income that we don't have to work. Is we've been doing this is my second marriage, and so when my husband and I got married, he was a teacher, and he had a wonderful pension, or still has the pension. A third of it goes to his ex-wife, and the rest of it will go when he passes. So if he passes before me, that income will be gone. So I needed a way to protect myself in the event that happens. So we took out a life insurance policy, a whole life insurance policy on him. It was a 10-year policy, and which we just paid off, $867 a month, because we're older and we were, you know, it was a pretty high, you know, amount of money every month, but we paid it off. And then when we started working with the coaches, their suggestion was that we find a line of credit, so we could borrow against that line of credit and then continue every month to put in a certain amount of money that would then compound and start to give us that path towards that passive income. So we were able to use that whole life policy, and it's been 2.5 years. It was $100,000 policy, and I just took out 75,000 of it. And every 3-4 months I pay it back. So we started with 40,000, then we went to 60, and this time we went to 75, and the payoff is happening faster and faster.
So you were advised, let me recount this. You were advised to go find a line of credit. How long did it take you to realize, like, I have a line of credit sitting right here with this policy? Did it take you a while to figure that out, or what happened?
it was suggested to us that maybe, to look at all these possibilities. And I started out with a bank, started looking at a bank, and then I think it was the coach who said, "Do you have do you have an insurance policy?" I said, "Yes, we do." And
So you're
because
taking loans against it to do more
yeah,
passive income, and then back and forth type of thing.
right. And the tax guy said to me, he said, when you came to us, now I'm 77, my husband's 81, and we've been doing it for about 2 or 3 years. And he said, when you came to me before and told me that you were going to be able to actually, now again, we have Social Security, I have an annuity, we have money. So it's not, we're starting from scratch. He said, but if you ever told me that you're going to be able to do this in like 5 years, I would have told you were nuts. And we're getting close. We're getting close to that number. And that's with neither one of us working at all. I'm still working very actively, and he is too, but he teaches tennis. So we have to kind of reduce the hours of the tennis a little bit. And that's where a lot of this passive income and the stuff that I'm doing is and because of the work that I'm doing, the income is good. So I should get there faster and work less. And then I really have a real passion for wanting to help my kids. My kids are, in their 40s, and one just turned 50, and they don't have the opportunities that I had when we were younger in terms of I put together $12,000, and that was our first house. And then we kept, flipping that, and they haven't had that ability yet. So that's high on my.
That's kind of similar when I left my postdoc and started to figure out, how am I going to start to build wealth? And one of the things that I kind of concluded that the American dream was dead, that I didn't feel I could do for my children what my dad had done for me. And I was like, it just kind of went through a period. It was like, and searching to figure it. And then when I figured out that, hey, you can use a whole life policy and use that as a financing tool. I mean, a lot of people in the industry refer to it as the infinite banking concept. Anyway, I read a book and figured that all out. I started saying, whoa, I can do for my kids. There's still a real bright future for them, because the dollars is relative. Hey, I paid several $100,000 for my first house in the San Francisco Bay Area, where my dad, I almost built his own house, right? My dad and your parents are probably similar in age, for the fact that my dad was 15 in 1933 when his father lost everything and they had to move to another city to find work. So we're kind of similar in that sense. That it's that this line of credit that you have, it sounds like to me, was really key for you to jump starting everything that you're doing.
Everything. And not only has that policy, been kind of building in wealth, we've been able. Last year we went to Australia for the Open, the Australian Open, the tennis Open.
In
we took
Melbourne.
about $10,000 from that. We were living in an apartment that we were paying $3,800 a month. And now we're living in a house where it's $5,500 a month. But the difference we're taking from the money from the our savings from that we take. So from that $75,000 that I just took out, I put away $22,000 of it to pay the difference in the rent between the $3,800 and the $5,500. So my husband and I are actually paying $3,800 still for our rent, and this investment is paying the rest without us having to come up with more income.
You're doing great. And are you investing in other real estate projects? Is that part of the vehicles that you're using?
No, actually, we haven't really expanded. We don't, coming from 2 divorced families, divorce is not great for income.
Oh, it's not.
I think that was the thing that my ex-husband was the maddest, at me about, because you know, we owned our house, we had an income unit with it, we had other stuff, and he had to take out a mortgage to buy me out of the house. So my husband and I both left with no house to build on. Again, people my age and couples that have been together for a long time, you know, there's a couple across the street who just, you know, is going to sell his house for 2 million and buy another house for 1 million. And so we don't have that. So we're renting. And I don't think at our age it's a really smart idea at this point to buy a house, even though I miss owning a house. So we have our money in a it's in stock in the stock market, but it's being managed in this way that every $10,000 that we invest with them, we get X amount of dollars back for 3 years. It's a 3-year like contract. We're lending them the money to invest, and then we're getting the interest on that.
So you're being the banker.
Right, exactly.
Right.
And we did
And
that.
that's part of your passive, right? Right.
That's right. And we lent a young woman about $35,000 that she couldn't get a loan because it was a new business. And so we lent her money, and she's paying us back at 9% interest. So that's just kind of a debt thing that we've been able to do for her. Now we're looking for other things outside of what we've done before, which I'm getting ready to do my due diligence and take the time to do, you know, figure out what the next thing is. I'm not sure yet.
So it sounds like you do quite a bit similar to what Scott does. Scott is he's a broker, mortgage broker, but he deals a lot in hard money lending, which, Scott, am I wrong? It sounds like to me she's doing it without even knowing that she's doing it.
Yeah, in a different industry.
Right.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, we're running out of time here. This has been really great, Tina. Is there
Jason, hold on one second.
I'll just add
Go
one
ahead.
last thing. Okay. My father had a furniture business in South Philadelphia, and he sold to poor people, and he would go buy the furniture for them and then collect, you know, over time, the interest. It was very high interest. But that's where I come from. That's that's how my father supported us. So, yeah.
well, that is way cool. That says a whole lot about how you've been able to think about. He was the bank.
He was the bank,
right?
without a doubt.
And
Just
so
hit me
when
as
did you
bank.
put it together that you needed to do what he was doing? Because there's passive income, right? Him collecting the interest over time on, 1,000 different couches.
Right,
That's passive income.
right.
When did you put that together that you should be doing that yourself?
Well, I think just the way I just said it just now just hit me, honestly. I've known about this for a long time, that my father did this, but I never really honestly, until the second, put it all together. That he was the bank, and that's how he did it. And that's, and that's what we're doing, and that's what I want to do more of.
Your whole life policy is the home base, if you will, for the cash.
Yes.
It comes in there, and then it has a place to stay for a while, but then you put it into debt notes or whatever, so then you can collect that interest. Very interesting, because when I was to be born, my mother came to where my dad was working. He was up on the roof of the last of 3 sixplexes in a U, right? He was up on the roof, and anyway, my dad and his twin brother had built those, and they owned it, and then they sold it when I was like 3 or 4, and they carried paper, right? They were the bank.
Mm-hmm.
So a similar thing. It took me a while to where I finally figured out I just need to do what Dad did. It's right there in front of me all these years. And when I started understanding, okay, I want to be and act like the banker, that's the passive income that I want to get after. And in that sense, you can really, there's not a whole lot of a limit to how much income you can have.
Yes. Yes. So it is finding the the vehicle and the people or whatever it is that feels safe enough that it's a good enough investment so that it doesn't come and smack me in the face. Right.
Sure. You don't want to lose your money.
Don't want to lose my money.
That's got to be rule number one. I love it. So, hey, I got a little bit distracted. Someone came to the door there. Thank you, Scott, for stepping in, because that was probably the best part of the whole interview, what you said about your dad right there.
Yeah. Yes. More stories. And my ex-husband was in the art business, which was even a crazier business, because the art had the value of a picture or a painting is in the eyes of the beholder. So how much does it cost? It's like, how much is it worth to you? What will the market, and he used to sell pictures in little silver frames. And my father used to say all the time, there's a lot of profit in that business. There's a lot of profit in that business. So, yes. So I haven't worked for anybody in 41 years. I've been on my own.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, we are coming to the end here. Any final words for our listeners?
Just get educated. I think that that's the most important thing. Honestly, this stuff is not taught. To find it is like behind the weeds, and it's like this big secret, and it's not. It's not. So the education that you guys are doing is really great. I really, I loved your presentation, Jason, and my kids are all coming to dinner tonight. And at some point, I'm going to play the video that you did for Catherine's thing that we were on together, because you go through it very, very simply. And I have 3 sons, and they're all really smart. And so perhaps we can do the same thing.
You bet. Help them, show them that, so you can, a shameless plug. You can hold up my book there and tell everybody that's part of the education they need to get. But I also noticed your book is in their bag, Mastery Under Pressure.
Correct.
And everyone, our listeners, we will put a link to where you can get that book, and potentially how to get in contact with Tina if you needed some coaching in the area of conflict resolution. And do you help people get on TEDx Talks? Do you coach them through that?
I can coach them on how to get on the TEDx Talk. Yes, I can. It's quite a process. It's an interesting process.
I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, what it takes to pull off a really good presentation, and that's all the peak performance stuff that I do. And again, the conflict resolution and the peak performance go hand in hand. You in order to be a great leader, and the reason that I go and I love working with very high level people is because everything comes from the top. And if you are that leader that has that presence and that cares for their people, and at the same time, is very concerned about how you're going to, make the money. People want to follow you and they want to stay with you. And so we got a lot of work to do around this world. So.
Love that. Well, thank you again, Tina. It's been a pleasure to listen to you and the stories and to see such success that you've had.
Thank you. And thank you so much for inviting me. This was fun.
Of course. Guys, if you'd like to connect with Tina, as Jason has said, we'll put all of her links in the show notes down below, including her book and how to contact her. If you'd like to connect with Jason or I, make sure to hit us up on your favorite social media platform. And if you like the show, please subscribe. It really helps us out. Last, remember that mastering your millions all starts with your mind and your team. Make sure they are the best. We will catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to Master Your Millions with Jason and Scott Henderson. Check the show notes for any links or contact information about today's guest. Make sure to follow the show so you don't miss any future episodes.